conference, justice and rights for the Palestinian people has always been an international priority for our union. We have consistently called for an end to the occupation and for a viable Palestinian state alongside Israel, and we're one of the first unions in Europe to support boycott, divestment and sanctions, to put pressure on the Israeli government to end the occupation and bring about peace. The devastating atrocities we've seen in Gaza over the last 8 months following the heinous attacks against civilians in southern Israel has shocked us all. And throughout this time, our union has rightly been demanding an immediate permanent ceasefire, the immediate and safe release of hostages, and full access of humanitarian assistance. We have supported and spoken at national and local demonstrations, published numerous statements and fought hard against the BDS bill, which this Tory government have now thankfully dropped. Only last month, our General Secretary was in Palestine as part of a Council of Global Unions delegations, meeting with and offering our solidarity to our sibling unions. We are, and I can't say this lightly, we are extremely honoured to be addressed this morning by His Excellency Dr. Husam Zomlot, the Palestinian ambassador to the UK, following which we will take part in a photo call for a ceasefire, for which you can all take part with, and placards on your seat. Ambassador Dr. Husam Zomlot is the head of the Palestinian mission to the United Kingdom. Before this, he was Strategic Affairs Advisor to the Palestinian President and Ambassador to the United States. Dr. Zomlot is also an economist and has held academic positions in Birzat University, apologies for that, Harvard University and the University of London. Originally from Rafah, Gaza, we have all seen the ambassador on our screens and at every national demonstrations, eloquently and very passionately explaining the devastating impact of the last 7 months, including on him and his family, and the decades of occupation beforehand. He is, without a doubt, an extraordinary advocate for the rights of the Palestinian people, and we are extremely proud to have him here today to address us. Ambassador Zomlot, you're welcome.
Thank you very much. Good morning, conference, union members, friends. What an honor, what a privilege to be among you today, to feel the energy, the vibe, the commitment, the warmth. You even arranged the weather in Brighton today. Thank you very much for hosting me, and thank you for the warm welcome. Not only for me as an ambassador, for the very people I represent. They very much appreciate this warmth and this reception today here at your conference. Thank you, Libby Nolan, President. And thank you, of course, Christina McCanny, sorry. Irish names, we love them. And your wonderful team here for the invitation to speak. It's truly a great honor to address the UNISON conference, the largest trade union in the United Kingdom, strong 1.3 million members, stronger 1 million women among them. What an energy and what power. The power of women, the power of 1 million, Christina, women member. I mean, can you go wrong with that? You can go all the way for your principles and vision. And I know, Christina, you have been to Palestine only last month in the occupied West Bank. I know it left a very deep impression on you. I know, Christina, saw firsthand the checkpoints and settlements that do and dot the West Bank and make movement of Palestinians so difficult and filled with danger, humiliations, and killings. I know Christina and the trade union delegation with her met our president, the president of Palestine, and met political and civil leaders. I know she got a taste of what it means to deliver under Israel's military occupation. I know she saw what it means to survive, to live under military occupation. And I know she came back, in her words, inspired and motivated to campaign for justice in Palestine. Christina and the leadership and members of UNISON, thank you. Thank you for being there and for the follow-up. And my friends, I know sometimes it is difficult to imagine what life under military occupation is like. And you may think that it is the deadly military operations that are the worst part. Think again. Since October, Israel has killed more than 500 people, including over 100 children in the occupied West Bank. And of course, these killings, along with the house demolitions, the rampant settler terrorism under Israeli army protection that has displaced more than 1,000 people from their homes and depopulated entire villages over the past 8 months. That is the West Bank. We're not talking about Gaza. But it is the daily grind, my friends. This is the daily grind. The constant imposition of unaccountable force. The constant denial of one's humanity, of one's dignity. The stripping of your humanity. The constant fear of arbitrary killings, arbitrary detention, of roadblocks and checkpoints. Never knowing if you can get to work or your children can get to school. Never being able to plan a day or a month or a year because the Israeli military pays no attention to your rights, to your lives. Pays no attention to your agricultural schedule. If it's the olive harvest, it pays no attention to the demands of your business or work or workers, the needs to your family. This, the constant daily humiliations, is what military occupation is really about. Around the clock attempt to obstruct your work, to prevent your education, to obstruct your ability to govern yourself, and to break your spirit every single day. For 76 years. But we, the Palestinian people, are hard to break, my friends. Very hard to break. And for many decades, we have enjoyed the support and solidarity of you, of the trade unions around the world, especially here in the UK. And of course, UNISON has championed trade union support, global solidarity, of course, including with Palestine. 44 years ago, it was the unions, the trade unions in Scotland. I'm going to applaud Scotland, actually. "44 years ago, unions in Dundee forged the first ever," where is Dundee? Forged the first ever twinning agreement between a Palestinian city and a UK one. The Nablus Dundee twinship agreement paved the way for many, many more in the UK and between the UK and Palestine. And solidarity, union to union, worker to worker, has only strengthened over these decades. They only strengthen because we share values. We share values of justice for all, of law applied equally, of fairness. We share a struggle for better conditions for workers, better conditions for families, and liberation. And liberation. Liberation from exploitation, liberation from occupation, liberation from oppression, liberation from racism and apartheid. I know you share these values because UNISON was one of the first unions to call for an immediate and permanent ceasefire in Gaza. I know you share these values because UNISON has long demanded that international law be applied to Palestine, and the call by UNISON that we be liberated in an independent sovereign state of Palestine. And that is not a gift or a favor, it's a right, and it's a long overdue right. And you, my friends, members of UNISON, have gone even further. You have demanded that the UK suspend its trade agreement with Israel until Israel complies with international law. And of course, until Israel withdraws its troops and settlers and dismantles its settlements, illegal colonial settlements in the occupied territory. We have stood in solidarity. And you have stood in solidarity, not only with the Palestinian people, but with justice and law. So, my friends, our rights are our rights. We have been denied these rights for at least 76 years. We have suffered ethnic cleansing. We have suffered occupation. And we are now suffering genocide. And still, we hear the government and political parties here in the UK debate when to recognize the state of Palestine. For years, we have heard successive British governments tell us they will recognize a Palestinian state when the time is right and when it will aid a peace process. When is the time right? When is it right? What peace process? Should we wait for genocidal Israel to come to its senses on its own? Should we wait for colonial Israel to settle all the occupied territory? Should we wait for apartheid Israel to force everyone out of Gaza, out of the West Bank? Aren't we listening and hearing senior cabinet members of the Israeli cabinet? Haven't we heard Netanyahu years over years bragging that he has accomplished the blocking of a Palestinian state from emerging? He's public about it. This is not a question of timing, my friends. This is a question of international law and resolutions. This is a question of rights. Our human, legal, and political rights. It is a question of humanity. Why should we live a minute longer under Israel's illegal, immoral, and violent occupation? No. We call on the British government, this one or the next one, to recognize the state of Palestine immediately. Join the 146 countries in the world who have done so. Make a contribution to peace that is not held hostage to an Israeli government that has made quite clear that it has no desire to end the occupation, end its genocide, and or strive seriously for peace. Recognize Palestine on the 1967 borders as per international consensus, as per the UK policy, long-held policy. And let me say this, if not now, then when? When? And my friend, the question becomes not why to recognize. It's never this question, why to recognize. The real question is, why didn't you recognize for all these years? Why didn't you recognize for all these years? Why didn't the UK recognize in 1999, 5 years after the Oslo agreements, the interim period, when it was supposed to be followed by a global recognition of the state of Palestine? Why didn't you recognize in the year 2012 when we went to the UN General Assembly and the vast majority of the world voted for a Palestinian state, but the UK abstained? Why didn't you recognize in the year 2014 when the UK Parliament overwhelmingly voted for the immediate recognition of the state of Palestine? Why didn't you recognize in the year 2017? That was 100 years of the Balfour Declaration. That was 100 years when the UK could have stood there and said, there is an injustice, a historic injustice, and this is the time to correct it. And therefore, we have missed many opportunities to correct history and to set us on the right path. And, you know, we Palestinians, let me say this, my friends. This isn't about us, the Palestinian people. This is about the United Kingdom, about the historic role, the moral, legal, political responsibility. The UK, Britain, in that period, in 1917, has directly contributed to our agony. Great Britain has promised our land without any consultation and turned us, the native population that have lived there for millennia, the cradle of civilization, the birthplace of Christianity, into non-Jewish minorities. And therefore, this is a time when we recognize people's rights right across the board. And I say this from my heart. This isn't about us, the Palestinian people. This is about the UK. Because let me say this, and I'm not reading anymore. Let me say this. Whether the United Kingdom will recognize the state of Palestine or not, Palestine will be free. We will be independent. We will be sovereign. So it's better for the UK to do so, to do the right thing, not to drag its feet, and to recognize our right of return and equality. Those are not just our rights, those are everyone's rights. And if we are not, and if we, the Palestinian people, are to accept anything less than our rights, it will be a defeat, not just for us, but for everyone. For everyone. It would be a defeat for the international order, which promised nothing less after the horrors of World War II. It would be a defeat for all of you here if we accept an iota of less rights. We must recognize our shared humanity, and that recognition demands equality under law, and law demands accountability. For decades, Israel has escaped accountability thanks to its backers. We are watching a genocide unfold the last 9 months, and still there is no accountability. So, my friends, the situation in Gaza is appalling. More than 50% of all buildings have been destroyed, 70% of homes, 80% of schools, all universities, a third of agricultural land has been targeted. Just 4 of Gaza's 36 hospitals are still and only partially operating. Factories, industries, ministries, libraries, mosques, churches, bakeries, businesses, even Gaza's central archive containing 150 years worth of historical documents, all gone. The destruction has been total and the killings have been unconscionable. More than 37,000 killed, the majority are women and children. Thousands more believed buried under rubble, thousands. Thousands more are projected yet to die from famine and disease. Gaza is the world's deadliest place for aid workers, for a health professional, for a journalist, for a mother, for a child. As we no longer shocked, and really this is the question, are we no longer shocked that Israel has imposed a famine on 2.3 million people? Have we normalized industrial scale killings? Have we normalized mass destruction? Where are the restraints that we built together after the horrors of the Second World War? And yet, there is hope, my friends. There is hope in the incredible resilience, heroism of our people in Gaza. And there is hope in the incredible resilience of our people all over Palestine. In the people like the Palestinian trainee lawyer, Noor Nassar, who has started a mobile school to provide some education to the 625,000 school-aged children who have received no education at all this year. There is hope in our people returning to pray for the Eid, which was just this week, for the Eid at Al-Umari Mosque in Gaza City, the historic Great Mosque of Gaza that dates back to the 9th century and which has been so severely damaged in the Israeli indiscriminate bombardment. There is hope in our courageous, brave doctors and nurses who, despite the threat of being targeted, killed, kidnapped, who, despite the threat of detention and torture, over 300 doctors and nurses, 300, have been abducted by Israeli invading forces since October the 7th, and at least 2 doctors have been killed in detention, and who, despite the lack of electricity, of fuel, of medicine, continue to perform medical miracles in these conditions. It is no surprise that Israel has targeted the medical and education sectors. One is necessary for life, and one is necessary for a better future. And the Palestinian people are an educated people. We are an educated people. Education has been our foremost means of resistance. We have one of the highest literacy rates in the world. We have one of the highest per capita rate of PhD holders in the world. If your aim is to erase an entire people, it is precisely the health and education sectors that you target. You target the people's means of surviving. You target their economy, their industry, their agriculture. You isolate these people from the rest of the world. This is precisely what Israel has done and is doing. But Israel has been trying this in one way or another for 76 years. We are not going anywhere, my friends. We ain't going anywhere. This is not the first time. We have recovered before, and we will recover again and again. But this time, it must be the last time. This will be the last time. This will be the last time. This will be the last time that we see our children being slain and murdered in this mass scale. This will be the last time to see our mothers being murdered, our homes destroyed, our schools bombed. This should be the last time to allow for the mass murder of our people. And for that, we must not just recover a semblance of normality and an absence of violence. That should not be the aim. We must secure our freedom, and with it, a sustainable peace. So, my friends, I do see hope. I see hope in the international institutions like the International Court of Justice, which has officially put Israel on trial for genocide following South Africa's case against Israel. And yes, South Africa deserves an applaud. I see hope in the International Criminal Court, which, despite attempts to intimidate it, and I'm sure some of you have seen letters by US Congress people saying you have been warned. It's almost like the Sopranos, wanting to impose sanctions on judges and their families, not on the actual country that is committing genocide. But still, we see the ICC has leveled charges of war crimes against senior Israeli leaders for the first time in history, and we are waiting for the arrest warrants to be issued, hopefully by the end of this week. We see hope in the UN Secretary General, Guterres, putting Israel on the black list of countries for the harsh treatment of children. We see the UN reports, including the latest one just a few days ago, the UN Independent International Commission of Inquiry on the Palestinian Occupied Territory, and the damning report that came out accusing Israel, and I quote, Israeli army is one of the most criminal armies in the world, in response to Netanyahu saying it's the most moral army. So we see hope, and we see hope in the European countries who slowly but surely are joining the rest of the world in recognizing the state of Palestine. We see Ireland. We see Ireland. And we see Norway. Norway deserves an approach. And Slovenia and Spain, the eyes of the world have been opened to the cruel injustice of Israel's occupation. Millions upon millions have taken to the streets around the world in protest at Israel's actions in Gaza. Millions have taken to the streets in the UK in protest at Israel's actions, including the labor movement, including you, and we see you everywhere. We see you at these marches and demos, and not just in London or Manchester or big cities like Cardiff or Edinburgh and Glasgow, but in small cities. And I must say, only a few days ago, I was in Bournemouth for what was described the biggest march in the history of that gorgeous, beautiful. Where is Bournemouth? You give me hope, Bournemouth. My goodness, I didn't want to leave that day, Bournemouth, by the way. But that is hope because of the mobilization of people everywhere. We see the student movement in the US and in the UK. I had the privilege of visiting some of them, the Cambridge University in Camden. I mean, they call them kids. Those are not kids, those are the leaders. Those are the leaders. And they call them students. I think we should start calling them teachers, teachers of humanity. And you know, history tells us that if you have the student movement and you have the labor movement, you are in the right direction. Because it is those two movements that always make history, that always press for change, and always succeed. And we remember the 1968 incumbents that pushed the US to stop its war on Vietnam. And despite a political class here in the UK, across the board, that has yet to seriously respond to your voices, and despite the media, what's the word? Compliance? And despite all that, and despite attempts to stifle your free speech, despite attempts to slander demonstrators and to dismiss Palestine solidarity, I truly believe that your eyes and the eyes of the world will not be diverted any longer. Once you have seen what is happening, and we have all seen what is happening, you cannot unsee this. You cannot unsee this. You will not forget. We will not forget. We need an immediate and permanent ceasefire for our people in Gaza. We need a massive reconstruction program to undo the damage that Israel has done. And we need persistence to follow this through where it has to go. This isn't about just going back to the status quo ante. We need to press ahead immediately, namely the implementation, the equal implementation of international law and resolution, backed by sanctions and arms embargo to secure freedom and self-determination for the Palestinian people, and to end the military occupation over the entire area of the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, and of course the Gaza Strip, and fulfill the rights of the Palestinian refugees to return and to compensation as per international law, and secure equal rights and justice for everyone, wherever they reside, wherever they live. There has to be equal application and equality for every Palestinian, and every non-Palestinian for that matter. And I assure you, my friends, the Palestinian people, we are ready. We are ready. and are able. And we, the Palestinian people, have been denied too long. And I know you here, members of UNISON, have worked hard. I've been following. I know how dedicated you were in opposing the government's boycott bill, a very clear attempt to interfere with British democracy and shield Israeli settlements from any accountability. UNISON, over the years, works closely with Palestinian NGOs, trade unions, and human rights organizations. UNISON works with Medical Aid for Palestine here in the UK, with the Red Cross, with Defense for Children International to boost emergency appeals. UNISON works with the global and European trade union movement to build support for Palestine. And your efforts to ensure accountability, to spread solidarity, and to stand with justice and the Palestinian people are working. Your efforts are working. Just like the anti-apartheid South Africa movement before, and we know the role you played, UNISON, the trade unions. We know that the anti-apartheid movement emanated from London, from the UK, and we follow where you're going with this. We follow the energy, we see the organization, we see the mobilization, we see the global movement, we see the Palestine flag becoming a symbol of freedom. Only last night I had the privilege of having dinner here, and the chef has decided that the sorbet would look like a flag of Palestine. It's a revolution. It's a... Yes, it's a revolution. Students have started a revolution for Palestine. Workers started a revolution for Palestine. Chefs are started a revolution for Palestine. And you know, when it's about everybody, you know freedom is very near. You know you're almost there. You know, at the darkest moment, it's just before the dawn. You know dawn is about to emerge. And not just the flag, even the humble watermelon has become a symbol of liberation because it carries the four colors of the Palestinian flag. So my friends, there can be no turning back. We must honor the memories of the children of Gaza so cruelly slain, including my own relatives, like my wife's 7-year-old cousin, Sidra Hassouna. Remember that little girl was left dangling? You remember that Sidra? That's my wife's cousin. Like 6-year-old Hind Rajab. Remember that girl was shouting for emergency services. She was left alone after her entire family in the car. Like Ahmed al-Najjar, the 18-month beheaded baby in Rafah. Like the 15,000 of our children whose futures have been taken away, denied them. We must not waver in our efforts to ensure a future for those they left behind, a future of justice and freedom and compliance with the law, a future of accountability. This is how we honor the slain children of Gaza, the slain children and innocent people all over the world, all the victims of conflict. This is how we honor them, because justice for the Palestinian people is justice for all. This is the moment, my friends. This is the moment. This is our time. This is your time. Thank you for your solidarity. Thank you for your humanity. And thank you for your action. Thank you very much.